Welcome to a world where love isn't just broken, it's beautifully shattered to reveal the darkest truths hiding beneath perfect smiles and polished rings. Here, every whispered phone call, every secret bank transfer, and every carefully wrapped anniversary gift leads straight into the heart of deception. These aren't just stories, they're confessions of wives who thought they were the only ones, until they discovered he had built entire empires of lies with multiple forevers stitched together like a patchwork of betrayal. From confronting hidden wives to realizing even his own mother played puppeteer in this web of manipulation, these real-life revenge tales will leave you breathless, furious, and craving justice. If you think you've seen shocking family drama, think again. Because on this channel, revenge isn't chaos. It's an art form. His late-night whispers had always been disguised beneath the excuse of deadlines, conference calls, and urgent crises that couldn't wait until morning. The hallway light would spill under the closed office door, warm and innocent, looking, while his voice dipped into soft, hushed tones as though protecting both of them from stress. For years, that sound brought comfort, the illusion of a hardworking husband fighting for their future. Then one night, the call came back. A name appeared on the screen that wasn't saved in any contact list. The voice that spoke was female, shaky with emotion, and whispered his name like a prayer mixed with panic. She asked, "Why haven't you come home yet?" It felt like a shard of ice sliding down the spine. Suddenly, every late-night meeting, every abrupt trip, every vaguely explained withdrawal from the joint account transformed from ordinary marriage inconveniences into carefully wrapped lies. Curiosity, tinged with dread, took hold. The next time he said working late, the car was tailed instead of trusted. He didn't drive toward the office downtown. Instead, he slid into a quiet residential street and disappeared behind the door of an unfamiliar house. He held flowers, lilies, not roses, a detail that stung more than expected. Watching him kiss another woman so tenderly, whispering the same phrases once spoken at their wedding, felt like being buried alive. Rage blinked red, but grief strangled any scream. Days went by pretending everything was fine. Soft smiles were returned, dinners were cooked, shirts were ironed. Meanwhile, deeper digging unearthed new roots growing from the same rotten tree. That woman wasn't a fling. She believed she was the only one. There were framed photos of him on her mantle, anniversary dates carved into trinkets, even a shared bank account tucked under cleverly different initials. The deception wasn't clumsy, it was meticulous. That realization made the betrayal crawl under the skin and nest there. The whispers continued each night, but now they were recorded, traced, cross-checked. He never once suspected that faith had turned into surveillance. Patterns emerged: flowers on Mondays, silk ties on Wednesdays, bank transfers every 19th day of the month. When confronted gently in disguise, the other woman cried with the heartbreak of someone who had been promised forever. But before sympathy could settle, another call came in. This time, a different voice, younger, sharper. She also called him by a nickname no one else used, and she, too, thought she was his lawful wife. The heartache turned into a quiet, calculated fury. Revenge wasn't going to be a scream in the dark. It would be slow, precise, and everything he had built on deceit would be used to expose him mercilessly. It wasn't just about watching his empire fall. It was about making sure he felt every crack as it crumbled beneath his own feet. And it all began with those late-night whispers. The numbers didn't lie. They never do. Small sums had been leaving the joint account for months, crumbs so insignificant they didn't raise alarms at first. 50 here, 100 there, labeled under vague descriptions like maintenance and miscellaneous expenses. But once suspicion took root, even the tiniest anomaly grew claws. A spreadsheet was created in secret, every withdrawal documented, every pattern analyzed. The trail pointed not toward bills or business, but to an address that didn't belong to any known office, friend, or property previously mentioned in casual conversation. The building stood in a part of town usually reserved for executives who liked views with their lies. Marble floors greeted visitors, elevators whispered up to private levels, and a doorman who seemed a little too familiar smiled upon hearing the husband's last name. Pretending to be an interior designer, access was gained without resistance. Unit 1405 opened like the mouth of a secret. Inside, everything looked expensive and hauntingly intimate. Velvet drapes rose, gold fixtures, and a king-sized bed with monogrammed pillows stitched in initials that weren't familiar. There were framed photos on the walls, laughing candids of a woman with soft eyes and a face that radiated a happiness once believed to be unique. Standing in that apartment felt like stepping into someone else's love story. One paid for with stolen trust and shared money. Every drawer was searched with quiet fury. Perfume bottles lined the vanity. Jewelry boxes held dainty rings that sparkled like promises. A birthday card lay open on the dresser, signed in his handwriting, dripping with affection that now tasted poisonous. The message said, "To my one and only." A laugh escaped, brittle and sharp. That phrase had once been carved inside a wedding band believed to be sacred. It seemed it was nothing more than a recycled lie repackaged for convenience. Realization sank deeper. This wasn't a temporary fling or a fleeting distraction. He had built a home with this woman, furnished it, loved it, paid for it all while looking straight into familiar eyes every night and claiming unwavering devotion. The betrayal wasn't loud, but suffocating. Each expensive vase, each tastefully chosen rug, each soft reading light whispered of time spent building a life meant to be kept hidden. It wasn't just money laundering through affection. It was identity splitting treason. The decision to destroy him didn't come with fireworks. It arrived quietly, the way poison slips into wine. Evidence was gathered carefully, photos taken, financial documents copied. Allies were unknowingly recruited through polite conversations. His own secrets would be turned against him, crafted into a revelation so devastating not even his charm could salvage the ruins. He would wake up believing he still had control, still juggling lives with ease, until suddenly everything he touched would collapse under the weight of his own deceit. All because those tiny bank transfers led straight to the front door of his deepest betrayal. She opened the door with the kind of smile only a woman deeply in love could wear. It faltered the second she saw the face on the doorstep, not a deliveryman or a surprise guest, but someone carrying a truth too dangerous to ignore. She was beautiful in a way that stung, soft features, warm eyes, dressed in the kind of gentle elegance once worn with pride. Invited inside through suspicion rather than kindness, the living room resembled a life stolen. Photos of him and her on vacations, matching robes hanging on hooks behind the bathroom door, a wedding portrait resting on the mantel, dusted with care. She spoke of their marriage with absolute certainty, how they had eloped 2 years ago in a private ceremony he claimed was romantic, insisting big weddings were unnecessary wastes of money. She showed messages he had sent just hours earlier, calling her his forever. Every word sliced deeper, exposing how effortlessly and confidently he could sell affection like a product to be mass-produced. The urge to scream, to drag every lie into the light twisted in the throat, but fury was swallowed for the sake of gathering more ammunition. Pretending to be a distant relative, questions were asked sweetly and patiently, while silently memorizing every painful detail. The other woman, unaware of the storm brewing, continued to gush about future plans. That's when it happened, the slip. She mentioned how difficult it had been for him after the divorce with his first wife, and how she tried to help him move on from that pain. Confusion cracked through, because there hadn't been any divorce. A careful probe led to a confession. He had told her that the marriage prior to theirs ended quietly, but the paperwork was still in process. He used it as an excuse whenever he disappeared for days. But that wasn't even the worst part. Tears welled in her eyes as she spoke of a younger woman he often referred to as his little adventure, whom she believed he had recently broken up with. Her voice dropped when she whispered the name, a name that had never been heard before, a name that didn't belong to either of them. It became clear in that moment. There was another woman somewhere out there living in the same illusion, wearing the same invisible crown, believing she alone was his queen. Shock gave birth to something poisonous and powerful. Grief shifted into steel. He had not just betrayed love, he had orchestrated a theater of wives, each one meant to play a role without ever meeting the others. Gathering this woman's trust, promising justice, and sharing selective fragments of truth became the next step in a much larger plan. Soon, the daughters of his deceit would no longer live in separate shadows, but stand united beneath one explosive revelation that would shatter his carefully constructed kingdom forever. The moment he called himself husband to more than one became the moment his downfall began. The gold necklace that once shimmered with promises now looked like a noose dipped in glitter. It had been presented with a speech about forever, on a night filled with wine and candlelight. Back then it was cherished, worn proudly as a symbol of devotion. But now, knowing what those candles were hiding, every gleam from that piece of jewelry felt toxic. Another anniversary photo was retrieved from a dusty album, the one where his arm curled possessively around a waist, eyes beaming with devotion. At the time, that smile had seemed like safety. Now it looked like the grin of a wolf pretending to be tame. Digging deeper into forgotten drawers, unearthed gifts collected over the years, bracelets, perfumes, silk scarves, each chosen carefully, always accompanied by poetic words meant to make a heart melt. That was the catch. He didn't give meaningless trinkets. He tailored each gift to a dream he promised to build, making it harder to believe any of those dreams were lies, until it became clear he had bought the exact same bracelet for another woman, only in a different color, until a picture surfaced showing a third woman wearing the same perfume, posted on a romantic getaway he claimed was a business retreat. Suddenly each gift became evidence, each ribbon a thread in his grand scheme of deceit. Every precious keepsake transformed into a weapon. The scarves were photographed, the perfume bottles labeled, receipts traced. A private investigator confirmed what the gut had already been whispering: 3 women, 3 carefully curated lives, each showered with calculated affection and anniversary surprises timed like a science. He didn't forget dates because he had mastered dividing his heart into neat calendars. On one weekend, he gifted pearls and whispered undying love. On another, he delivered roses to a different address, quoting Shakespeare like he invented romance. Meanwhile, the third received handwritten letters about soulmates and destiny, sent from hotel rooms shared with the others, standing in the middle of a bedroom once believed to be sacred, surrounded by poisoned memories disguised as celebration. A new resolve hardened. These gifts no longer represented love. They were relics of betrayal, each one carrying fingerprints of manipulation. The heartache shifted, not into tears, but strategy. Every photograph, every love note, every congratulatory dinner reservation would become part of a confession he'd never willingly give. The intention was no longer to mourn what was stolen, but to make him choke on what he thought he had so skillfully divided. Someday soon, all 3 women would sit at the same table, wearing the similar jewelry he had sworn was unique. As the truth unraveled in front of his smug, unsuspecting eyes, the man who swore loyalty with a smile sharp enough to cut bone would finally bleed from the jagged edges of his own treachery. There comes a moment when tears dry not from healing, but from hardening. The ache that once made breathing feel impossible slowly forged itself into something far more dangerous than grief clarity. Watching his lies stack up like trophies on a shelf, witnessing him strut through life believing no one could outsmart him, flipped a switch that could never be undone. He lived like he was invincible. 3 wives carefully positioned like chess pieces, bank accounts masked beneath fake company names, love letters sent from foreign bedsides. Pain once spiraled wildly out of control, but now it sharpened into precision. The first move was subtle, a polite friendship with the second wife, built on shared devastation disguised as casual conversation. Sympathy was offered without revealing too much. She, too, had believed every promise he whispered. Each of her stories added another puzzle piece to the growing picture of his depravity. The younger one was harder to reach, kept at a safe distance by his instructions, yet even she had one weakness: curiosity. When an anonymous message hinted that she wasn't alone in wearing his ring, disbelief turned into suspicion, and suspicion turned into frantic searching. Meanwhile, the financials were quietly ripped apart. Every transfer mapped, every fraudulent signature exposed. Documents were copied and stored where he would never think to look, underneath the floorboards of the very house he gifted with such grand flourish. He never imagined someone could use his own arrogance as a weapon. Every extravagant detail he designed became evidence. Every affair-funded vacation, every diamond purchased on stolen trust, suddenly they weren't just part of a lifestyle. They were the bricks of the prison being constructed for him. He kept boasting about being untouchable, even flirting with danger, belittling anyone who dared question his loyalty. But his empire wasn't built on strength. It was woven from secrets, stitched together by the belief that no one would ever compare notes. What he didn't know was that his wives were slowly aligning against him like a storm forming far from shore. Betrayal formed a bond more unbreakable than love ever could. Finally, the trap was set. A single dinner invitation, posed as a surprise celebration, was delivered to each woman separately, addressed in his handwriting, copied perfectly from years of studying his strokes. His ego ensured he would attend, believing he was the grand orchestrator of lives, not realizing the stage was being set for his own public execution. The heart that once broke now beat with ruthless purpose, ready to watch him crumble beneath the weight of his own arrogance and beg for mercy from the women he thought he had fooled forever. There had always been something distant and watchful in his mother's gaze, as though she never fully welcomed another woman into her son's life, only tolerated with carefully disguised politeness. In the early days, that coldness was dismissed as possessiveness, the natural resistance of a mother to any woman trying to claim her son's heart. It almost felt sweet back then, a sign of how deeply she loved him. Only now did it become clear that her affection wasn't protective, it was predatory. The first clue came in the form of a handwritten letter found tucked away in his study drawer. It wasn't addressed to him, but from her, warning another woman not to be too demanding, or he would lose interest. The tone was eerily familiar, gentle poison dripping beneath polite words. She wrote about him with pride, calling him our legacy, our golden promise. She reminded the woman to never ask questions when he traveled, because men like him must remain free to build their empires. It sparked a sickening curiosity. Old photo albums were revisited, noticing for the first time that his mother had never once allowed a picture of them together to be framed in the main hallway. Instead, she proudly displayed images of him with different women at various functions, one blonde in a blue dress, another brunette at a gala, a younger redhead at a charity auction. In every photo, his mother stood beside him, smiling like a queen presenting her prized heir to the highest bidder. There was no shame in her eyes, only ambition. The truth exploded piece by piece. She had been orchestrating introductions, arranging secret liaisons, and smoothing over misunderstandings, whenever a wife became suspicious. She called them tests of loyalty, to see which woman could handle the pressure of loving a man destined for greatness. She taught him that a powerful man should never belong to just one woman, that devotion was weakness, and affection should be scattered like seeds to control many hearts at once. The realization settled like a stone in the stomach. His mother hadn't just known about his hidden wives. She had trained him to collect them. Standing in her perfectly polished sitting room, surrounded by family portraits that now looked like trophies of manipulation, a confrontation unfolded without raising a single voice. She admitted everything without apology, even boasting about how well he had followed the plan to expand their family's influence through multiple marriages. Her final warning was chilling: a true king doesn't bow to one queen. Walking out of that house, the heart no longer felt broken. It burned with a rage stronger than anything he had ever inflicted. The destruction planned for him would now include the throne that bred him. Because the greatest betrayal of all wasn't the lies told by the man claiming to love, but the mother who taught him how. If this story made your heart race and your blood boil, don't forget to hit like, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next twist is even darker, and you won't want to miss when karma finally knocks.